Legendary former boxer Dingaan Thobela is being laid to rest today. He'll be laid to rest later on at the Westpark Cemetery in Johannesburg, but his funeral service just took place at the Dlamini Multipurpose Hall in Soweto, and that's where we find our reporter Khotso Sello, who's been following the proceedings there closely. Khotso, what's the latest? I see there's some official business that's happening now with the funeral service having been concluded.
Yeah, the legend that Dingaan Thobela was is getting a state funeral, which is a Category 2 provincial funeral, and he will be laid to rest at the Westpark Cemetery. We were in a 2-hour service earlier on this morning where a lot of family were able to just pay their final respect to this legend. We do know he's a 3-times world champion, and the likes of Brian Mitchell, one of the guys from the 80s who was a world champion, then he laid over the baton to Thobela, and he was very, very emotional, just talking about how Thobela was a champion as he just walked into that Edenvale training ground back in the 1980s, and from 89 he just simply took the world by storm and propelled himself into the 90s as one of the cult heroes. We do remember him sporting that line in his hair that resembled Madiba in his heyday, and that was just a statement of intent, I guess, of the transitioning times at the time. We do know that Madiba was a big champion of trying to use sport as a vehicle for change, and Dingaan Thobela was the poster boy of that era, and he simply resembled and embodied what South Africa can be and what young black South Africans can achieve on a global stage. We do know that South Africa during the 90s was still very much barred from participating in international sporting events because of apartheid, but the sport of boxing was ultimately the first sport that was able to not to produce world champions at the time, and it's simply unbelievable to think that Dingaan was only 57 years old when he passed away on the 29th of April. A sad day for South African boxing, but I think it's also a moment for South African boxing as a whole to take up and reflect on what kind of situation that they find themselves in. South African boxing has fallen from that pedestal of theirs as being the #1 sport in the country, and it's languishing way below rugby, cricket and tennis and other sporting codes. And I think when we lose giants like this, when we lose history like this, I think nowadays when people walk in a shopping mall, they can't even identify a South African boxer or a world champion at least, and I think this is a wake-up call for the sport, and some of the speakers today were very, very honest in terms of how things need to be taken seriously when it comes to the boxing fraternity. A legend is being laid to rest, Category 2 provincial type of funeral, and as we can see, the police marching in front of the vehicle that will take him to his final resting place.
Khotso, we see behind you there, we see in picture the proceedings and the procession by members of the SAPS, testament to what you just spoke about, the Category 2 provincial official funeral, and it just speaks to the importance of the person that's being laid to rest here today. Dingaan Thobela, 3 world titles in his illustrious career. It was at a time when a lot of us still young, but we knew we could name boxing champions in South Africa, and he was one of them. The likes of Brian Mitchell, Baby Jake Matlala, Vuyani Bungu, those were the names among whom Dingaan Thobela was in his boxing career.
Certainly, Benji, and more legends are here, the likes of Welcome Mngita, Jan Bergman, and many others who are here to pay their respect. And I think more than anything, they are here to remind everybody where boxing used to be, and they would like to have boxing back to those lofty heights of the 1980s and 1990s. We do know the fact that a lot of money was pumped into the sport during this time, and so many divisions got split, created such, an influx of or dilution rather of the world titles, and you didn't have the best fighters fighting against the best fighters. Today you can't even name from top of mind, from welterweight right up to heavyweight, who the current champions are, and it just shows that sometimes money is not always the best solution for a sport. But more than anything today, I think the Thobela family is here to just come together. We did hear earlier on that Dingaan Thobela's sister talking about how in recent time the Thobela family has been split due to the fact that there's been so many disagreements. We're not quite sure what happened to Dingaan Thobela's business of the Rose Funeral Parlor, and those are some of the things that we are going to try and find out to see what kind of legacy from a business perspective that he's left behind. But what we do know is that he was very big on education. He went to school, funny enough, with the likes of Dr. Khumalo Pike and Fadima Dita. They were in the same teachers' college, mind you, and it just shows that our former sportsmen took education seriously, and it's one of the things that that stand out about understanding that education and sport do go hand in hand, and hopefully this type of communication and history and storytelling can be passed down from generation to generation. I think you and I, Benji, at some point we created a boxing documentary, and these are the types of stories that we need to tell so that we remind one another and the generation that comes before that South Africa does have a rich history of black sport professionals.
Khotso, quickly before I let you go, where to from here? What's happening? How's the program looking like?
So from here, we'll be heading over to the Westpark Cemetery in Emmarentia. That's where his final resting place will be. As we mentioned earlier, it is a Category 2 provincial send-off that he will be receiving. And I guess by the time we get to the cemetery, we will be explained to exactly what will be happening in terms of the state officials and how this Category 2 funeral is being unfolded.
Khotso Sello, live to us there from Soweto, from the Dlamini Multipurpose Hall, where the funeral service of the Rose of Soweto, Dingaan Thobela, was or has just been concluded, as you heard from him there, from now to the Westpark Cemetery right here in Johannesburg. We'll catch up with him a little bit later.